Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright Neil Simon has written almost a play a year since his first Broadway hit, Come Blow Your Horn, in 1961. By the end of that decade, 4 of his comedies were running simultaneously on the Great White Way, including Barefoot in the Park and The Odd Couple. His Tony Award-winning productions have made him one of America's most successful and popular playwrights. In his book, Rewrites, he switches to prose to write his memoirs. They are entitled, as I said, Rewrites, and I'm pleased to have him back for part 2 of a conversation.
But I haven't written part 2 of the book yet.
This goes through 1973.
Right, yeah.
And we talked about Joan, who died at 40, and how her memory inhabits this book.
Very much so, yes.
Let me talk about the theater. We talked about her and about the theater. First, Rewrites, because that's what your life is about, rewriting.
It's about what my life is about, and it's what I had to do with my life. When Joan died and all the other changes I had to make. I mean, to leave New York and move to California was the biggest rewrite I ever had to do with my life.
Because you were of New York, by New York, for New York.
Yes, I hated it out there. Joan hated it out there. I've never really taken to it. I mean, there are things about it I do like, but when I come here, I get rejuvenated.
But then why do you live out there?
Because we have a child in school, my 2 daughters live in Santa Barbara, everything is there for me, and so I get here often enough.
Okay, so you keep an apartment here too, I guess.
Absolutely, yes.
You know, so you're back and forth whenever you want to go.
Yes.
Rewrites is also about the fact that you rewrite your life when you move, but it's also about...
The rewrites in the plays, enormous.
Are you a big rewriter?
Enormous. I mean, I have a new play coming, which will be the 30th, Proposals. We go in rehearsal in June. I am now just finished the 7th rewrite of it. I start on page 1 and go all the way through it. Because if you leave it alone for 2 or 3 months and don't read it, and then you look at it, you say, who wrote this? This is terrible, this part. It's as though someone sent it to you in the mail and you're reading it for the first time.
But you go all the way through with one rewrite and then come back and start again.
I start again, yeah. Some pages you just leave alone. They seem to work fine. But even if there's one line in it, I will retype that page. I don't work on a computer, so I type it. And I'll retype that page thinking I'm just retyping it. And by the time I'm finished, I've changed about 5 or 6 lines on the page.
What do you have against computers?
Well, first of all, I don't know how to work them. I've tried to learn.
We can fix that in a second.
It's I don't know, not a gender, a generation gap, I guess.
But I mean, it's so much easier.
I know, but I feel that I won't be as careful in going over everything. I say it's all there, so I have no idea.
You're more careful writing because you don't want to go to the problem of having to redo it.
Yeah, listen, I'm better off than Woody Allen. He works on a typewriter that's not even electric. I hear it's one of those old Royals and the dust, is still on it. That's what I hear.
You look for, plays are different than writing screenplays.
I'll say, yes.
You'll say. What's the difference?
Well, first of all, it's in the process that I get to do it all these times, and I get all these rehearsals, and I get all this time out of town trying it out with an audience. So it's like every single day I'm going to bat again, getting to fix it up. With a film, you write it, you may not even have a rehearsal. They'll have one reading of it, and then the next morning you start to shoot it. And then when I go to the dailies and see, the 3 minutes of film that we did the day before, I said, I could fix that tomorrow. And I said, sorry, it's done. I don't like that process. And yet I've made a number of movies that I did like that came out well.
You have never wanted to direct film.
No.
And you don't direct plays because you're there as the playwright.
Right.
But why not want to direct films where you could really take a translation and do something different, stretch, and all that?
I don't have that kind of a visual mind. I don't know how technical things work. I mean, I leave everything in the house to my wife to do. If she would come and line up the cameras, then maybe I would do it. I'm just not good at that. I'm listening. George S. Kaufman used to come to the theater, the great playwright, come to the theater and stand with his back to the stage and listen. That's because he wanted to hear the words.
Yeah, right.
If you don't hear them, then something is wrong. I feel that way about directing anything. I'm always listening rather than watching.
Yeah. You also say that plays have to have a universality, and that's different than film.
You think so? I'm not.
Yeah, I mean that they had to have a theme. In plays, you got to have a. You know what I mean?
I think you have to have a reason to do a play more than you have to have a reason to do a movie. Sometimes you have to do a movie just because they need to get out a certain amount of movies at the studios each year, and that's why we see a lot of junk.
So the idea of themes and what's inside of a play and what's inside of a movie is no different in terms of what you do.
Well, the big difference is a play is a very personal journey. It's my journey that the director is then going to enhance, improve, guide the actors through it. Not so with the film. It's I don't know whose personal view it is. It starts possibly with the writer, but it's always the director's name up there. I don't begrudge him that, but it's he really is the one in charge. And if he says, I need to have this rewritten, which is not what a director in a play will say. He'll say, Neil, I think you ought to rethink this, but not, I have to have this rewritten.
He wouldn't say that.
In the theater?
Yeah.
No. Well, I had the
Why wouldn't they? I mean, I wouldn't think that would be helpful. Wouldn't that be helpful to have,
well,
if Mike Nichols was directing, is it just sensitivity, or what is it?
Yes. It's, I did a play with a director who came to me on every line and said, not every line, but the ones he didn't like, he would say, you think this is right, Neil? Maybe you could do better on this, or maybe we can fix this little scene there. And I said, fine. Then he directs the same movie version of that play.
Yeah.
And I go to see the first cut of it, and he's left out 3 major scenes. And I said, where are those scenes? He says, I didn't like them. He gets to cut out those scenes, but in the theater, he'll come to me to change 1 line.
Yeah.
That's why I like the theater.
That's why you like the theater right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
To read this book is to know how much you were shaped by family.
I think so, yes.
You know.
Very much so.
You can do more in a memoir than you can in a play. Yes or no?
Absolutely, because the reason I wanted to do this book is because they were going to have, a few people came to me and said, we want to do your biography. And I said, no, I want to do it. You could do it later on, because you will write about the events. I will write about my thoughts. What the thought process and feelings of what went on in my life, from Joan's illness to doing the plays, what I went through personally, the odyssey that I had to go through, which is why so many people, even people close to me in my family, said, I never knew that's what was going on in your head at that time.
But that's what makes it compelling. It's your story.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
the story is the fear, the emotion, the elation, the depression. Right. All that is what, you know, well, not the events, not the...
Exactly. It's not the event. The events,
not opening night.
They know that the play was a hit or the play was not a hit. They don't know what I was personally going through. That's why there was far less dialogue in this than anything I've ever written. Yeah. I mean, a great deal of it is prose explaining how I feel.
You also believe you can be more personal, much more personal.
Well, when I'm writing the book, as opposed to a play or television, I am writing for one person sitting in the chair reading the book.
Somebody sitting at home with their feet up saying,
right.
Wow.
Now, I can reveal to him some pretty dark secrets in my life that if I had to go up on stage and read from the book and read those things, I'd feel very self-conscious and would probably choose not to pick out those sections to read.
Because you as the... What do you mean you read? I mean, you mean...
I'm reading. No, I went, for example, to the 92nd Street Y here in New York.
I saw that on
I read 45 minutes of the book. I picked certain sections of the book to read. Yeah. There are certain things that I would not reveal to an audience, the wide audience, even knowing that possibly television was going to be doing this. I don't want to sell the death of Joan as an important event in my life.
And a play would be a commercialization of the death of Joan.
Exactly.
So you don't want to do that because it's beneath sensitivity.
Well, it's exposing too much, too publicly.
But you could read from this book.
I know, but...
In front of an audience of 1,000 people.
Oh, yes,
You're not selling anything. So it's not the pain, it's just one is commercial. Well, when you're reading at the 92nd Street, why are you selling the book?
Yeah, but I was not reading, as I said, the things that I thought were too personal.
Oh, in other words, we couldn't have convinced you to read the things that were too personal.
No, no way. As a matter of fact, I touched on one thing that really surprised me. There were 800 or 900 people sitting there, and rather than talk about what happened to Joan when she was ill, I started to started to read when we first met, and I cracked for a minute. I mean, I'm not grieving 23 years later over the loss of Joan and still, you know, feeling tears in my eyes. But because I was doing it publicly, I felt my voice catch. A tear came to the eye, and I said, I knew in my mind that this was too close. This was too personal to be talking about. And it was just meeting Joan for the first time.
Yeah.
But it touched the chord.
It wasn't seeing her that are lying in a hospital. It was
no. It was a wonderful scene. It's a light, lovely, wonderful scene.
But I felt that too. It is the notion of the loss. I mean, it's not so much the scene of the loss, that's the worst scene. It is what touches you is by remembering the best of times, you're still, that what flashes across your mind is
You probably know it yourself, but there's some little button within all of us, and if you just touch it, we become so sensitive to it that we don't know how to control that emotion at that moment, and you never know when it's going to come.
Yeah, I mean, and it can be even somebody you didn't even know. I mean, I went down to do a thing about Rabin, and I remembered a moment. And
with him, yeah.
And you had to stop to gain control of yourself.
Exactly.
Same thing.
Exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
The act of writing, on some level of 0 to 100, you are really in touch with your emotions, with yours.
Yes, very much so. Yes.
Why is that? Is that just craft, or is that something?
Well, part of it is craft, but getting in touch with the emotions, I think it is the act of being able to let it out and say, I have nothing to hide. What are you going to do to me? I can tell you about this. I don't want to expose somebody else's life and make them miserable, but I can tell you what shaped my life, what my ups and what my downs were. I have no problem with that.
Then do you have to have a partner in life who can do the same thing? I mean, you would seem to me to have to be with people that are capable of doing that too. No?
You mean to live our lives together?
Yeah,
you mean like my wife? Do we do that?
Yeah, sure.
Well, it takes years to do it. Strangely enough, it worked in reverse with Joan. She was the one who pulled me out. She said, why are you afraid to talk about this? Say it to me. What is it you're feeling? Yeah. I felt so inferior to her in the beginning. I thought she was so smart, and I was afraid to reveal myself, and I learned to do it. I was married for the second time with Marcia, and we had it sort of going. With Diane, now, it's even.
Yeah.
We are able to talk about everything, and it's great.
And it wasn't necessarily so the first time with Diane, and it got that way the second time?
That's right, that's right. We weren't able to
do it. And that's one of the differences, she says.
Yes, and I think it's because she learned to do it because I was doing it, and she felt safe. That's the thing that you must feel is safe. That you're not going to be exposed too much.
You're not going to be punished for having that thought.
Right,
right,
right, yes.
I mean, I admire people, amazingly, who I think are so razor-like honest with themselves, you know, and will do and say anything, and they believe it's the truth. And I will say, God, I can't believe you're saying that. I mean, I'm not quite as far along as a lot of people are in just saying. It's not a question of deluding yourself.
Yeah.
It's just, well, you have the thoughts, but you're not necessarily willing to lay it out there on the table for consumption.
But I seem to do it without knowing it, and much to my regret sometimes, when I was not married, I went out one night with Sally Field, and at the end of the evening, she said to me, "You're like a 5-year-old boy running out naked in the streets." Meaning, I was so open, I didn't care what it was that I said.
This was the first date?
Well, it was the only date that we had. She was very nice. I liked her. I think she liked me, but we were not for each other. But I remember what she said.
Yeah. Tell me about Mike Nichols.
Brilliant. He's just brilliant. As I said in the book, maybe we talked about it last time.
We did. We touched on it.
I sat behind him trying to learn how to direct, never learned a thing. I mean, he just knows what to say. He just knows what to do. He knows how to communicate with actors and actresses. I mean, he's not right all the time on things. We've had our differences, but by and large, I just admire him so much, and I'd work with him any time. He's such fun to work with, too. He brings out the best of you. When he calls on the phone, I have to elevate my IQ about 8 points. Yeah. Hi, Mike. I don't want to make any mistakes with Mike.
It does seem to be a really bright mind at work there when you talk to him.
Very much.
And also, I mean, the sense of his interest, too. I mean, sometimes he'll say things and you're not quite sure what he means. I mean, one said to me about Primary Colors. He said, I want to direct this film because it's about friendship and honor. I said, what? It's about friendship and honor?
Yeah.
He said, yeah, that's what it's about. And all great films are about friendship and honor. And, you know, it's just like, well, it sounded so profound to me, and I spent the rest of the evening trying to figure out why all films were about friendship and honor.
Well, I think maybe he just needs that to work with. He has to tell himself, I have to look for the friendship and the honor. And maybe not, because I'm not on Charlie Rose right now, so I can go do what I want. Robert Redford. Well, I didn't know Redford very much, except for the one time when we worked on Barefoot in the Park. But oddly enough, we became neighbors out in California, out of the beach property there. Very insulated man in many ways.
Very serious.
Yes, very serious. And yet, he can do comedy terrifically well. He was
Barefoot.
wonderful in Barefoot in the Park.
Yeah.
But he kept saying to us, when I'm funny, tell me, because I don't want to be being funny. I don't want to act funny. I'll do it real. If they laugh, fine. But I don't want to get their laugh. We said, we'll watch you, we'll protect you.
Because it wasn't the image he wanted for himself.
It was untrue, and I don't think he believes in anything that's false.
Yeah. George C. Scott.
Oh, well,
You're right about him, too.
Yes. Frightening man. I used to knock on his dressing room door, and if his dresser wasn't there, I wouldn't go in. I didn't want to be alone with him. I don't know what he was going to do to me.
This was for Plaza Suite, right?
Yeah, Plaza Suite. He was terrific, but I mean, he was missing one day for 3 days on
Where
the show.
was he?
God knows where he was.
But you weren't demanding to know, huh?
I didn't ask, and Mike didn't ask. I said in the book, we all wanted to live. So we didn't say a word, and George came in, he picked right up where he was when he left, and he was perfect. He's a great actor. Great.
In the early years, Sid Caesar.
Well, I love Sid Caesar. There's something about him that he's like an innocent in a way, and there's some part of him that's genius. I don't know how to really, I don't know, say what a genius is, but he has something that is so funny about him, so incredibly humorous. He was another one that I was afraid to be left alone with.
Because?
Well, there would be an enormous silence. We were together alone in the room, and we didn't speak for 5 minutes. And because he would say, what? I would say, nothing, Sid, nothing.
Yeah. Walter Matthau.
More complex, I think, than people think, but he's just got a built-in funny face. He's like Bert Lahr. For those who remember Bert Lahr, you just put them out on a stage or on a film, and they are funny. They don't know how to be not funny, although Walter can do serious things. But just the way he phrases something, it's built into him.
When you're writing plays, are you thinking character? Are you thinking...
Only character, not actor.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
You're not thinking actor. You're
Never.
not thinking this is a play for Walter Matthau, and as I see this character, I see Walter Matthau.
Well, that happened on The Odd Couple, but I had done an act and a half and then went to see a production of Guys and Dolls at the City Center here in New York, and I said, who is this man? And I met him at a party. And I said, I'm writing a play, it's called The Odd Couple, and there's a part in it that I'd love you to play. And he said, send it to me when you see it. So I had him in mind from that moment on, but he could have said no, and then I would not have had him.
And is he going around saying that he wanted to play the other part?
He did. He did it the day that he got the script. He called back and he said, okay, I read your script. I'll do it on 2 conditions. One, that I put in $10,000, the other, that I play Felix. I said, why do you want to play Felix? He says, because that's acting. You know, Oscar I can phone in. And I said to him, Walter, act in somebody else's play. Play Oscar in my play.
Be Oscar for me.
Yeah.
Now, what about the $10,000?
Well, after we read the first 2 acts of the play on the first day of reading, he said, can I up it to $20,000? We got to the 3rd act, as if you remember in the play, in the reading the book, it fell apart. And he said, I don't know if I want to invest in this play or be in this play. He was ready to quit. And I had to go home and rewrite the 2nd act, well, 3rd act, actually, 3-act plays then. It took me months. It took all the weeks of rehearsal, all the out-of-town tryouts until we got to Boston, until I got it right.
You say 3-act plays then. Are all plays now 2 acts?
Yes. Only in Shakespeare's day, they were like 3, 4 acts. Chekhov did 5 acts. People used to go home and have dinner and come back.
So when did it change from 3 to 2?
I think maybe in the early 70s. Yeah. I don't know why, but it did.
Did therapy make a difference for you?
I'm sure it did. Yeah, it had to have.
Because you finally said, I'm tired of talking to doctors, I'm going to stop.
Well, eventually, yes, I've had enough of hearing me. But for a number of years, I felt I was going to a college, to a university, which I did not have the opportunity to do when I was a young man.
Explain that to me, because I don't
why
understand.
I just go to college?
No.
Oh.
Well, that's, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, explain to me why you thought therapy was a college.
Well, first of all, over the
No,
years...
you didn't sit there and talk about the great books, did you?
No. We talked about life.
Yeah, I know.
And, for example, just a little thing. And I told an analyst that I was with about this big fight that I had with my wife that night, and I said she was wrong, absolutely wrong. And she said that, and I said this. And he said, well, you had options, you know. And I said, what options? And he told me the options that I could have said. And I said, you're right. I did have those options. I think most people do not think that they have options in life. They think they only have one answer for it. So that trebled and multiplied 1,000 times in all the sessions I learned about different options one can have in their life.
Yeah, that reminds me, I don't know where, maybe I don't know where I read this or where I saw this, is one character says to another, you know, that's not you speaking, that's your therapist speaking.
That's funny, and that's not so untrue. I know that's true because that's happened to me. Oh, I hear your analyst saying that. You know why? Because the wording is a little different, a little bit more profound than they would usually be.
Rewrites is this book of memoirs. It ends in 1973 with the death of Joan, his beloved wife, and I assume that he will continue writing these memoirs. Proposal is a new play, sort of a Midsummer Night's Dream, is it?
Well, because there are 5 love stories, it's an outdoor play, it takes place outside, the first time I've ever done that. It's a comedy, but it's a rather bittersweet comedy, I think.
A couple of questions before, as I leave this and put it aside. One, you've gotten to know President Clinton. You're happy about his election. You feel good about the country, and
yeah.
You know.
I wish maybe we would have gotten one of the houses, the House or the Senate, make things a little easier. But I mean, I think nothing has changed. It feels like.
Yeah, someone said this was about status quo. Yet at the same time, it's about status quo. The fact is that it's the first time a Democrat's been reelected since Franklin Roosevelt, and
right.
the first time that the Republican majority has been reelected in a long time.
I know. Yeah. I think maybe the country is smarter than we think. I mean, not that they made the right choice, but that they did have something in mind. I wish more people had voted.
You know what amazes me? And people will come up to me in the most amazing ways, and they'll say to me, I mean, just ordinary Americans, and they'll have this piercing insight about an interview. You know, and it just always stuns me.
It amazes me when you see that the news is interviewing a man on a tractor in Ohio or Iowa, and you think he just knows about that farm, and he says something so insightful about politics, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I find. I mean, I do have that sort of confidence. As Bill Buckley once said, I'd rather be judged by the first 100 names in the New York phone directory than the entire, or the Boston phone directory, than the entire Harvard faculty.
That's right. You know? That's right. Yeah.
Memoirs, rewrites is Neil Simon's first. What do you say? First what? First
volume, I
first
guess.
Volume
I've started the second one, then I put it aside because I've done the first 50 pages, so I know where it starts the day after this one ends, and then I said I don't want to write it yet. I want to, you know, take in what's happening with this book and see what the feeling is of the people who've read it, which I'm getting, and all the reviews I've read and the people I've talked to.
Well, what are you getting?
They like it.
Yeah,
they like it very much.
They
like the personal stories very, very much. They like the humor in it, and they like the truthfulness. And in a sense, they say it is a page-turner. They said, I don't want to stop. I want to keep on reading what happens.
I gave it to someone. That's exactly what they said. It was working for me. And they said, you know, I can't put this down. So there you go.
It's surprising for me because I've never written a book before.
But did anybody ever say to you, well, you didn't go far enough, you didn't go deep enough, you didn't go personal enough?
Only a few. Most people said you went much further than I ever thought you would go. You really opened yourself up. So it was the minority. Perhaps I'll go more.
That's what I'm saying, reinforcing it along that line.
Yeah.
All right. It's great to have you back.
Thanks, Charlie. It was great to be here.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.